am making a video to talk to you about using poetry to help students with their reading fluency. I'm going to be showing you the resources in one of my poetry sets that I have on Teacher Pay Teachers. However, what I'm going to share with you, you could absolutely create this on your own and you wouldn't have to purchase my Teacher Pay Teachers set. I just like to be really open and upfront about that because yes, I'm showing you what's included in the resource so that you can really see before you would decide to purchase, but I'm also going to be really clear that you do not have to purchase. You can simply use these tips and apply them to the students that you may be working with. So if you are a homeschooling parent who is looking for adding some variety to your students' reading program, I highly encourage you to consider using poetry. If you are a classroom teacher, I highly encourage you to use poetry to enhance your reading instruction for your readers. I think poems are wonderful because they are short and they are manageable pieces of text. They promote fluency because they automatically lend themselves to repeated readings, and research shows that repeated rereadings is a good way to improve a student's reading fluency. And an awesome thing about fluency practice is that research also shows that it increases a student's reading comprehension. So kind of a win-win in terms of how much fluency intervention can impact reading overall. And again, one thing that's awesome about using poetry is that it gives students an authentic reason to reread. So it's really encouraged to have students read for a purpose. And if you are having your kiddo, either your own child that you're homeschooling or a student in your classroom who's struggling, but you let them pick a poem that they really love, then you can have them practice rereading it and becoming more fluent at it and give them the opportunity to read it to important people in their life. And I will show you kind of how you could do that, some options. All right, so I am showing you what is included in my Easter Poems for Fluency resource. So this is just the cover page. You definitely wouldn't have to print this. You could save yourself ink by not printing this if you purchase, but that is what the cover looks like. And in this particular resource, you will get 6 poems. They are not poems that I composed. They are poems that I found, and where I was able to, I gave credit to the poet on the resource. But I have created these full color pages that you can laminate. There's the jelly beans. There's Easter eggs in this one. Coloring Easter eggs, secret information, some things that Easter brings, and Easter everywhere. Now, in all of my poetry resources, you will get those full color examples that you can print, and I encourage you to laminate those, especially if you're going to have lots of children and having access to them just for durability. That makes sense. You also get, in the resource, you will get a black and white copy, hold on, finding it, of all of the poems as well. So, for example, here's the Easter Everywhere color poem, and here is the black and white one. So this way, if you do a poetry intervention with a student and you want them to have a copy to take home, you can give them this copy, they can color it, they can take it home. And also included in my free poetry intervention resource, and I'll link to that below, you will get a lucky listener page that you can copy on the back of the poem that you give to the students, and this way, hold it up there so you can take a peek at that. So this is really nice for kids to be able to track reading their poem to important people in their life. And it just kind of gives them that authentic purpose for rereading. So that is included as well. And you get kind of a thematic one of these lucky listener pages in all of the different poetry sets that I have. So the Easter one kind of has those flowers to go with the spring theme, and some of the other ones have ones that are thematic. but also know that in my poetry freebie resource, and I'm going to share with you real quick what's in that, you will get a copy of that page as well. So that is what is included. Also, you are going to get a couple of different pages. These look the same, but they have different words on them. A couple different pages just kind of talking about how to set up a poetry intervention. I think poetry is, again, a great opportunity for you to implement a fluency intervention for struggling readers, and it also is something that would be really, really easy for a volunteer or a paraprofessional to implement once they kind of have a routine for how to introduce that to students. And so in that resource, you will get some directions on how to do that, but I'm going to really quick talk about that just in case you decide to try to set up a poetry intervention without purchasing, which, like I said, totally fine. One thing to keep in mind when you are selecting poetry, though, for fluency intervention is that it is okay for you to select a poem that is a little bit above what we would consider the student's instructional or independent reading level, because when this is introduced as an intervention for the students, they are going to start by listening to a fluent adult reading the poem a couple of times while they follow along. So step by step. First, select your poem. Second, give your student a copy of the poem so that they can follow along with their finger while a fluent adult reads, so that they can hear and pair what they are hearing with the words. Coloring Easter Eggs by Sarah Benedetti. I take an egg all shiny white, and then I dip it out of sight. I leave it there within the cup, then after a minute I pick it up. And oh, it's a lovely shade of green, the prettiest Easter egg I've ever seen. So you are going to have the adult read that a couple of times while the student follows along and just listens. And then after 2 or 3 times of doing that, right away, invite that student or that kiddo to read with the fluent adult reader. You may have to slow your pace down a little bit, but not. Make sure that you're still using inflection. Make sure that you are still speaking fluently, not choppy, because you want them to hear that fluent reading. So a couple times they listen to the fluent adult, just listen, follow along. Then 2 or 3 times they read with the fluent adult. Then right after that, they practice reading on their own fluently. And that strategy seems to work really, really well to give them the support that they need. And it really will boost their confidence in themselves as a reader. So that's the basic strategy. Now, my recommendation would be that you could have a student work on the same poem, maybe even for, depending on how often you're doing the intervention. I mean, if you're a homeschooling parent, you could do the poem, you could keep that same poem for a couple of days and then introduce a new one when you think your student is ready. If you're doing it in a school setting and maybe they're only getting the intervention like every other day, I would keep the same poem 2 or 3 times before introducing a new one. And again, you just have to gauge that based on what you see your students need. So switching gears, I'm going to show you what is in the resource that I have that's the poetry freebie on my Teacher Pay Teachers page. And this has been downloaded a ton of times, so I know people are using it and really hopefully liking it. So you get this white page, which is a cover that you can glue onto a 2-pocket folder. This is a place for students to keep the poems that they're working on and the ones that they've mastered in one place. And so what I did for this student is I just used packing tape and attached it. And then I can write and wipe off with a dry erase if I wanted to reuse this with other students. If you're just going to use this with one kiddo, you could have them color it, you could have them illustrate, draw, and then tape it on there so that that's their cover. And then inside, they are going to keep some tracking sheets. So one of the pages that you will get is the I can read these poems, and you can see that this is an actual student who I have used this intervention with, and she is just writing the date that she got the new poems and the title of the poems. And that's a way for her to kind of track and be excited about what she is accomplishing with this intervention. And then also in the folder, let me pull this up so you can see it. So I would put that tracking sheet on one side, and then this student has her paper copies of the poems. Okay, so she worked on the poem First Snow, and then on the back side of that she could rip that off and take it home and have people listen to her read, and then they would sign it that they were the lucky listeners. And then there's a place for her to illustrate her poems, and that one does not have an illustration. Let me show you one that does. So here is a poem, and then she has this, in my mind my poem looks like this. And I included that because that kind of taps into the comprehension piece and that visualization, and getting kids to be able to listen to a poem, read a poem, and digest its meaning from the visual images that it creates, and then they can illustrate. So that page for visualization is included in the set. Also, you get a lucky listeners list, and this is a way for students using this intervention to track when they've had someone listen to them read and sign the back of their poem. Then for every person that signed that they have listened to the student read, they can fill in a heart, and you could have some kind of an incentive for them for filling in the hearts, or a whole row or something. And then lastly, there is a page included called Word Scoops, and this is a page that can be very open-ended. My intention for this was students are going to encounter vocabulary in poetry that is vivid and also unfamiliar to them. And so I think a great way, again, to dive into that comprehension piece is to have them scoop words out that are new words to them. So if there were words that they weren't familiar with, they could put them on a scoop. So you can see this kiddo put scarlet on a scoop, and she wrote the definition that scarlet means dark red. So they could scoop and put the definition. They could scoop out sight words. If they're working on high frequency words, they could just find all of the ones that they know in the poem and write those on the scoops. It's very open-ended, and that's intentionally so that you can decide as the instructor what you would like them to scoop from their poem. So that's the end of my video. I hope that this gets you all pumped up and excited about the potential of using poetry in your classroom, whether that be a homeschool classroom or a brick and mortar classroom, or even if you're just a mom that has your students going to a brick and mortar school and you want to work with them a little bit on reading at home and give them a fun way to practice it. This is a great way to do that, especially as you think about getting together with families for different holidays and maybe extended family. If you have your children learn a special poem that they're going to read to the extended family on one of those special holiday occasions, that would just be a wonderful opportunity for them to practice reading and also their oral speaking skills, which is a win-win. All right, thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day. Bye.